the Patron Thief of Bread,
Yeah.
which is available sometime in the month of May, depending on when you're listening to us. Esteemed audience, it's probably already available. You could be buying it right now while you're listening to us talk. And my promise is always to authors, I do not summarize other people's backgrounds and I do not summarize other people's books. How painful for you to sit here and listen to me fumble through it. So what does a esteemed audience need to know about the Patron Thief of Bread?
So The Patron Thief of Bread is a big fat middle grade book. It's very long. I'm so sorry, but I'm told it goes down easy. So it is a middle grade book. It's my fourth middle grade, and it is about a group of pickpocket orphan thieves living in a sort of medieval France analog. It's not actually medieval France because medievalists online scare me, and they can be very yelly if you get details wrong. So I made an analog. And they decide to place their youngest member, who's this kind of quiet little girl named Duck, into an apprenticeship with the town baker. And the idea is that she will pass them bread and coin and steal whatever else from under the baker and give it right to this king. But she's not expecting the baker, Griselda, to be this big-hearted, jolly, warm, understanding, kind of motherly figure. And so the book is really about Duck's sort of torn loyalties between this family that she's always known, the Crowns, this group, this gang, and the baker, who is ready to take Duck under her wing. And so about these two found families and sort of kind of like Oliver Twist vibes, I'll say. And then interspersed between Duck's story is the story of the gargoyle who lives on the roof of the unfinished cathedral in this town. And he is very grouchy. He hates the birds. He hates the other gargoyles because they're just big gossips. But he's very, very lonely. His cathedral will never be finished, which means he'll never be a proper gargoyle because he'll never be able to protect the people who come into the cathedral for sanctuary. And so Duck and the gargoyle, their stories intersect towards the end in a very sad but very heartwarming finale. And it's about bread and it's about gargoyles, and it's a very cozy, comforting book, I hope. And it's definitely about found family, and it's definitely about choosing who you want to be, even if it's totally different than who you were yesterday.
And so who would you say is the ideal reader for this story?
A really bookish 12-year-old. Because again, it's a big book. It's long. It's over 100,000 words. Whoops. But a really bookish 12-year-old, somebody maybe who has loved Kelly Barnhill's work, somebody who has loved Christina Soon Tornvat's work, somebody who loves Jonathan Auxier's work. It has a real just like classic middle grade feel. She said so humbly.
The story opens with an Oliver Twist quote right there. Yeah. So I assume you want to put that Dickensian mindset up front.
Yep, definitely. I love me some Dickens. Although it's not Victorian, it's medieval, but the character dynamics definitely are Dickensian, she said humbly. Again. I'm hoping that feel comes across. Yeah.
Well, I wondered, I did a quick search for the medieval city of, is it Audierne?
It's made up. And
the only thing that came up was your book. I'm like, okay, no, it's
made up. Well, creation. Yeah, funny thing about making up a bunch of French sounding cities is then the audiobook people call you and they're like, how do you pronounce these? And I'm like, I don't know, sound French.
The best you can. Have a good day.
Best you can. I don't know. You tell me.
So and obviously there's some magic involved. There's sentient gargoyles. This is not 100% accurate. But I could tell you've done quite a bit of research. How much research do you do, and how do you go about it to create this fictional world?
Oh, tons of research. And it's ongoing, and I love it. For this, I mean, books. I start with books. I usually I'll go to the library, or I'll go online and just Google like medieval life and start there with like a nice boring kind of encyclopedia-esque type thing, and then go off from there. I found a few podcasts about medieval, like there was a podcast called, I don't remember what it's called, but it's basically like this day in medieval history, and they pick whatever day it is. They just talk about events that happened on that day. And it could be really exciting things happening, like major wars starting or kings being killed, or it could be like, all of these goats got out of this pen in this one town and it was a disaster, and they wrote about it. Medieval time period is cool and fascinating, and not as polished as we like to think it is, I guess. I mean, we like to talk about it being really smelly and like gross, which it kind of was, but also people were not as pious and dutiful as I feel like they're depicted often. Like they're just people, like they're all, I don't know, running around, pranking each other, yelling at each other, going to church, not going to church, like just people. And I fall down rabbit holes, and often will, like I learned about the hop fairs of Champagne County. Are there counties in France now? I'm not sure. The Champagne region, there were these hop fairs, which basically were just summertime fairs that would travel around in this region, and kind of like farmers markets. So I read a ton about those and was like, oh, I have to put these in. And so they're in a chapter of Patron Thief. Same with learning about, I mean, obviously I watched A Knight's Tale a million times, and included a night tournament, but it's not a real tournament. It's just like, it's like a scrimmage basically. So yeah, I mean, do I research the plot, or do I research and find things to then shoehorn into the plot? I can't say. A little of both, probably. And that's how you end up with 100,000 word middle grade book.
When you sit down and you're about to embark on a new book, how much do you have? Do you have your beginning, middle, and end? Some idea of that?
Yes, ideas come to me all at once. If I have the idea, the whole story's in my head, basically, beginning, middle, end. Yeah.
So you sit down and you write like a full outline. This is all the things that's going to happen, and then you expand it as you research.
Yeah. Yeah. So I write my first draft without doing any research, because I find it, first of all, so far I haven't written anything that I don't at least have like cursory knowledge about. Like if I had to sit down and write something about the Dust Bowl, I would have nothing. I'd be like, I don't know. I got nothing. I have no story to tell here, but I can write convincingly about, pirates or Bigfoot or a medieval cathedral, because there was at least a little bit that I could start with. So I like to start with the first draft, just so I can get the story out and kind of see the shape of it. It feels more like a rendering, and it's really messy, and there's lots of placeholders, and there's lots of me talking to myself in the manuscript, because my rule is to just keep writing, even if I'm saying like, okay, I don't know where this is going, maybe I could do this. I write all of that down. Like I just, if I stop, then the anxiety catches up to me and I realize like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. This is terrible. But if I keep going, I don't know, it helps me. And so I finish with the first draft, and then that's when I read through and I outline it to see like what the heck I just wrote, to like look for the plot. And at that point, that's when I start researching, and I really love, I research, I go through the manuscript and write down everything that I need to research, big and small. And it's really fun to then go do the research and then come back in and plug all that stuff in, because some things are really big and you're like, oh, I need to research like medieval money systems. That's bigger than just like plugging it in. But other times it's like, research, I need to know the name of this shoe, like what would they call just basic shoes, or whatever. And then I just write the question on a note card, and then it feels like secretary work when I'm in research mode then, because I have this stack of index cards that all have questions that I need to research, and or I feel like I'm like studying for the SATs or something. Like it's just very left-brained, go through the cards, write the answers on the cards, and then on the next draft, I have my stack of cards there and I have my messy manuscript and I type it in. And when I come to something that I need to know, there's my cards, and they're usually in order too. And it's really nice to just like be like, oh, past me researched this so wonderfully, like I'm my own assistant. And anyway, so I try to separate the story from the research as much as I can, because they just scratch different parts of my brain so much. And again, they affect each other so much that I actually, I try to keep them separated as much as I can until they ultimately consume each other and become inseparable.
And you can't stop the momentum of drafting to go do research right then and just find out the one thing, because you'll spend an hour online looking at stuff.
Yep.
And the book won't get written, right?
Exactly. Well, and or I'll find other people who have done what I'm trying to do better, and it feels devastating. Or I definitely, it's all about keeping that ego happy, and that means like blinders on, pretend like what I'm writing is the best thing in the world right now.
So you need that illusion that you're the first person that's ever even attempted something like this.
Nobody's ever written a medieval middle grade ever but me. So original. Yeah.
So when do you start reading the market to see who else has done this and what can I learn from their successes and failures?
Pretty early on, because I'm pretty good at compartmentalizing that, actually. And I don't feel very threatened by what other people have already written. In fact, right around the time that I was getting ready to turn this into copy edits, this should have come out in fall last year. And Candlewick said, actually, we have Kate DiCamillo coming out with a medieval middle grade in the fall, so maybe we should push yours back so that it doesn't get overpowered by the Kate DiCamillo train, which is a massive one. And my editor,
maybe you can ride right behind her as she breaks.
Exactly.
And you get
that's exactly it. Yeah. And I thought about, there's a scene in the show New Girl when Nick is talking to Jess's dad, who's played by Rob Reiner, about his book that he's writing, this zombie novel. Z is for zombie. And he's talking about how there's a love triangle with the zombie and a werewolf and this girl. And the dad says, well, that sounds like Twilight. That sounds just like Twilight. And it's set in Seattle. And Nick pauses for a second, and you think he's going to say, like, dang it, like my book's already been written. But instead he says, well, whoever wrote that is really smart. And that's just like my take, is just like, oh, a medieval middle grade coming out about a girl and there's some goats. Well, whoever wrote that's really smart. So part of the research too is finding other books tonally that match with what I'm trying to do. And that might be books that are medieval, but it also might be books that are not medieval. So I read a lot of I reread a bunch of Laura Amy Schlitz's books and reread all of Kelly Barnhill's books. Again, not necessarily medieval, but just hit the tone that I really wanted to hit for this book. So I do that pretty early on, somewhere around like the first drafting or the outlining, just so I know like my touchstones, so I know my influences and know what I'm going for.
Well, I predict that readers are going to be so excited about The Patron Thief of Bread that they're going to say, you know what, I want something that's similar. I guess I'll give that Kate DiCamillo a chance.
That would be great. That would be great.
Trial.
Yeah, I think that's fair. A nice little chaser for this. Yeah.